So let's go live to Washington to speak to Andrea Stricker, Deputy Director of FDD's Nonproliferation and Biodefense program. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show. The head of the UN atomic watchdog is warning that an Israeli strike on Iran's southern nuclear plant could trigger a regional disaster. If Israel ignores these warnings, how severe would the consequences be?
Great to be with you, Leigh-Ann. I think we don't have any information that Israel will in fact target Bushehr. There's no reason that they would want to create a radiological disaster. And from a non-proliferation standpoint, the Bushehr reactor really doesn't pose a threat for nuclear weapons development. It has a level of plutonium that is a byproduct from operating the reactor. But it's not the ideal plutonium that Iran would want. And so I would expect that Jerusalem will stay far away from this facility.
And what is the major concern? Which facilities are raising concern in Iran if they were struck by Israel?
Well, we saw Israel strike the Arak reactor, and that was not a concern because it was not operable. It didn't have fuel rods inside. And so that's why we saw them take out that facility. There's really limited radiation risk, to be honest. When we're talking about impacting enriched uranium stockpiles or enriched uranium plants where they make that material, the risk is really localized. You would have to have workers or recovery teams wearing protective gear for a time. There would be a release of different chemical particles and alpha particles. But it would dissipate over time and it would remain local to the facility. When we saw the Natanz pilot enrichment plant destroyed a few days ago, the IAEA, the UN nuclear watchdog, reported very little problem with radiation at that facility.
And Andrea, back in August 2024, you did write a piece and you said Iran was shockingly close to nuclear breakout potential. The world must act. How close is Iran to having a nuclear weapon? And in many ways, why were these warnings ignored?
Well, from our estimates, they had enough enriched uranium to make up to 22 nuclear weapons, and they could make that weapons-grade material within 5 months. And there's an estimate of about 6 months to create a crude nuclear device, so something more rudimentary than what would go on a missile, but could be delivered via truck or plane or other ways. And I think the Israelis, from my understanding, took action now because they had seen growing indications of activities related to constructing nuclear devices among the Iranians. The US differed in its interpretation overall about the urgency of that. They saw more research efforts, but the Israelis, with a country the size of New Jersey, really were not willing to wait until the Iranians put together a nuclear device and made good on their threat to possibly deliver it.
So with Israel targeting Iran's nuclear facilities at the moment, we're seeing rising tensions both between India and Pakistan and the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. Is the world edging closer to a possible nuclear radiation incident happening?
I think my concern is mostly with the Russian role taking over the Ukrainian nuclear power plant, Zaporizhzhia. There have been numerous incidents where the plant's safety and security was put at risk, and the UN nuclear watchdog was very concerned about a radiological disaster, given the fighting and impacts to the plant. Pakistan and India is also a concern. There is nothing really to stop the two from escalating from that situation spinning out of control, except for the threat of mutually assured destruction and the threat that they would do serious damage to their populations respectively if they traded nuclear launches. So there are many things to be concerned about right now with nuclear weapons use. Let's hope that cooler heads prevail, though, in all of these situations.
And also, I just wanted to ask you, what do we know about Iran's secret nuclear mountain, Fordo. This has been spoken about a lot since this conflict did break out, since the strikes between both Israel and Iran. And do we have any idea what its uranium enrichment capacity actually is?
We do. By last count from the IAEA's inspections, they had about 2,100 operating centrifuges, some others that were being installed. And the plant has the capacity to make about 9 to 10 nuclear weapons worth of weapons-grade uranium within a few weeks. So it does pose a serious threat. And as we know, it's very deeply buried, around 60 to 90 meters below a mountain. Very difficult for the US and the Israelis to eliminate it, although they could do some serious damage and possibly take it out fully if US bunker buster bombs came into play.
And Andrea, there have been reports of neighbouring countries taking precautions as global fears of nuclear contamination do actually grow. We've seen social media users in the region, they're sharing advice about what to do in an event of a possible nuclear leak. And this is something that is concerning many people. What are the correct steps to take if this does actually happen, and the best way to protect themselves?
I believe that if there were some kind of incident involving a nuclear reactor, which we don't expect because Israel does not want to cause this kind of a regional disaster, people should probably evacuate and listen to authorities and take any protective gear measures that their governments offer. Again, I don't think people need to be too concerned because Israel has enough to deal with the strikes that it's taking now, and likely doesn't want to cause additional concern for countries in the region.
Andrea Stricker, thank you so much for joining us. Deputy Director of FDD's Nonproliferation and Biodefense Program. A pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.